the Polymarket studio in LA. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. It's the Young Turks.
Is it?
Yeah, and well, I'm pretty sure it is. I'm going old school here with a T-shirt under the blazer, daring to, possibly enrage the salt dragon here with my outfit.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, if we're just not going to care about being presentable on the show.
But in the real world, when you're wearing this T-shirt, you're gonna look badass. Okay, that's the TYT flag surviving every storm. So, and by the way, this one you can't get at shoptyt.com. You can get Caught Trying, Operation Hope, all those Team Hope, all those wonderful shirts. But this one's for people who gave over $250 to our drive this year. tyt.com/team. The shirt, we're not Kanye. The shirt's not worth $250, okay? This is just the appreciation for folks who are helping out a lot. And we do appreciate you, and I've already seen people in this shirt in the street, and when I do, I'm like, you're my boss, I love it. Okay, so anyways, got a big show ahead for you guys, of course. So instantly, Republicans falling apart at the seams. So, I mean, my God, what a difference a week makes. What an unbelievable difference. So let's get to it, Anna.
Well, we begin with this doozy.
I was supposed to be nice. They say something happened to me when I got shot. I became nice. And when you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. When you're dealing with them, you can't be too nice. You really can't be. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to be nice. Is that okay?
There you have it, folks. After a Republican National Convention where Donald Trump at least attempted to give this air of a changed man, an individual who's been traumatized by an assassination attempt, who's trying to unify the country. No, now all gloves are off. He's freaking out over Kamala Harris and how much enthusiasm there is around her after, of course, Biden dropped out of the presidential race. And so, not nice anymore, not nice.
Yeah. Anna, did anyone predict this happening?
Yeah, this is the real reason why Cenk wanted to do this story. So let's not waste our time and immediately go to Cenk's prediction. Go ahead, let's watch.
They're constantly pushing this changed man after the shooting. He magically completely changed. Could that be that moment be traumatic enough to create significant change? It's possible, but in a 77-year-old, less likely, and Donald Trump, very, very unlikely, right? So that's the image they're trying to put out. It's smart, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump's gonna be Donald Trump. You cannot contain him for 4 months. Even if he's able to contain himself in a pre-written speech here by his staff, etc. The minute we're done with this convention, tick, 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 until he's back on True Social going, these Democrats, and they're destroying our country, and I hate them, and somebody should do something about it, and look at what they did to me, and look at what they did. So that's my guess. Let's see.
Look, guys, there are predictable patterns here. So this one's pretty much a no-brainer. So I don't get a lot of credit for this one. So, but his team, his campaign team, thought, no, we're going to contain him for 4 months. That's why every speech at the convention, and I'll tell you my favorite in a second, was like, behind the scenes. You'd never believe how kind Donald Trump is. Yeah, you're right, I wouldn't believe it. And this is like the Biden team going, behind the scenes, you should see how young he is. No, they're exactly who we think they are. But they wanted to say after the shooting, he's a changed man. And as you'll see in a longer version of that clip, he's like, he can't stop saying things that are at the top of his mind. He's like, they wanted me to say it, I wouldn't. Of course you can't contain Trump. Of course he's gonna say the meanest, craziest things ever. That's who he is.
Yeah, I prefer my politicians to have a smile on their face as they're aiding and abetting a genocide in Gaza. Like they're much better. They're much better. But no, I get what you're saying. Like he's just outwardly out of control, right? Whereas most traditional politicians, they have this, they have the pleasant demeanor, the professionalism, the stateswoman-like behavior. And then behind the scenes, they're collecting cash, they're making paper, right? They're taking the lobbyist money, much like Trump. Trump does that as well.
But Anna, that's the thing with Trump, right?
Yeah.
So whatever ills that the Democratic Party has, Trump has it twice as much. So the two that Anna just mentioned. So on Israel, they're now attacking Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for not kissing Netanyahu's ass enough, right? We have that later in the show. And Trump took $200 million from Sheldon Adelson. He's trying to take $100 million from Miriam Adelson and give Israel the West Bank, et cetera, et cetera. So way worse. Like you can't imagine almost anything worse than aiding and abetting a genocide until you get to Trump saying, not enough, finish them, right? And take whatever land you want, who cares? And then he called Biden as an insult a Palestinian. Okay, and then on corruption, he's like, hey, oil executives, handy's in the corner, if you give me money, right? Come on, man, he's asking for $1 billion from the oil executives and he says, I'll give you anything you want, tax cuts, and who's gonna pay for it? The average American's gonna pay for it. So he's twice as bad on every issue that the Democrats are awful on. And then on top of that, he adds in, he's a lunatic. So.
No, he adds in showing us exactly who he is by not pretending to be a kind, statesman-like individual, right?
Well, because he can't help it.
And let me be clear, I'm not giving him kudos for that. I'm just saying that Donald Trump creates a lot of spectacle and that drives a lot of negative media attention
I
for
see
him,
what you're saying.
which drives me crazy because there's like this pretending that he is like particularly horrible when you have all sorts of politicians, not just Democrats and Republicans, who engage in all sorts of terrible policies, who take bribes from all sorts of nefarious figures and carry out policies that go against the best, the best possible outcome for the American people, but actually ends up being the best outcome for the nefarious figures that are bribing them. Like that's the thing that drives me crazy about the way the media covers in general. Obviously, I'm not giving you specific examples, but you can tell, like Trump immediately attracts the negative media attention, whereas other politicians who might literally engage in the same policies that he champions don't get the same negative media attention because they have that air of professionalism.
Yeah, so that also cuts both ways. I totally get what you're saying, which is don't let Trump off the hook. He's guilty on all these fronts, right? But when a politician, Republican or Democrat, does the same exact thing, but says it in a smoother way and in a more refined, intellectual way, then mainstream media melts and it's like, oh my God, what a wonderfully fake politician. Oh, there's so, but wait a minute, they both have the same policy, which is give Israel all the money, don't ever question them, do as you're told. So, okay, our point isn't Trump is better. Our point is be careful of all politicians and look at their actual policies and don't get tricked like mainstream media just on their presentation.
Yes,
right.
That's exactly right.
But now the other side of that coin, Anna, though, is also interesting, which is that MAGA gives Trump too much credit for honesty when they mean a different word that sounds very similar but isn't, which is he's authentic. He's authentically Trump. He can't help but be Trump.
True.
Right? But he's not honest. There's a difference between the two. So, for example, when he says, "Oh, the election was stolen," he knows the election wasn't stolen. He told some people internally that it wasn't stolen, etc. Right? That's why they needed the fake collectors. He knows all that, right? So, but he goes, "They were so unfair to me. Stop this deal," right? And so it's not true, but eventually, by the way, there's even a chance that he gets himself to believe it. So, there was mules, and remember, he's a conspiracy theorist. So you could be nuts and you could be lying, but you could come across as authentic. And what would be amazing, and we're still looking forward, I think Bernie does do this actually. A politician who's actually authentic and honest.
Yeah, he might be the only one.
He might be the only one, yeah.
But Trump went on during this rally to attack Kamala Harris. So let's just watch a little more of that.
So now we have a new victim to defeat. Lion Kamala Harris, Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe. The most incompetent and far left vice president in American history. For 3.5 years, Lion Kamala Harris has been the ultra-liberal driving force behind every single Biden catastrophe. She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. If she ever gets the chance to get into office, we're not going to let that happen.
Biden catastrophe.
Yeah.
Lion Kamala sounds like he's saying lion as in rawr, lion.
That's why he had to spell it.
I know.
L-Y-I-N apostrophe. Okay, look, come on, guys. The way that Trump says things is hilarious. You got to acknowledge that. I don't know that he intends it to be hilarious, but
I doubt it. Yeah.
Biden. And my new favorite is him pronouncing JD Vance's wife's name, Usha. Never just Usha. It's always Usha. Okay, like Norway. He's such a weirdo. Anyways, but it's funny. It's funny. So look, I wish Kamala Harris was far left, ultra liberal. Where? How? Right? So they're trying to invent this thing. And ironically, some of the left is helping them. Everybody, like both Trump and the far left, are pretending now that Kamala Harris is some sort of progressive champion. Show me a policy.
Yeah, it is amazing to see it, to be honest with you, from the far left, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the same group of people who couldn't stop like just viciously attacking her during the 2020 primaries because she was a prosecutor. Kamala the cop, Kamala the cop, Kamala the cop. And now it's like, no, we are coconut pilled and we love her and she's amazing and she's gonna save us from from Donald Trump. Okay.
So good news for you, Anna. All you gotta do is become a Democratic politician and all of a sudden the far left will enjoy how much of a cop you are.
Yeah, I'm not interested in anyone enjoying me. I am who I am, okay?
Well, that's certainly true. Okay, you get authentic and honest with this one.
Yeah.
So look, back to the main point. 55% of this country hates Donald Trump. And whether you like it or not, whether you think that's a great stat or a terrible stat, you could choose not to believe it, it doesn't matter. Every poll, 55%, saying, I don't want any part of Trump. So all we needed was a new candidate. And I said that, I said it hundreds of times because you just I said, pick any random Democrat and you all of a sudden will have the lead from no chance. And the reason is because 55% of the country hates Donald Trump. So it's not gonna take some sort of legendary FDR figure to beat Donald Trump. The person who's gonna beat Donald Trump is Donald Trump. You just gotta get out of his way. And so Biden couldn't get out of his way. He's walking too slow. And now Kamala Harris, not only getting out of his way, but doing a pretty good job of, rabbit punching him every once in a while, and it's driving him a little crazy. And this, by the way, I like some of Trump's nicknames. I think they're goofy and hilarious, and some are stupid and awful, but this one, not a winner. Yeah, Anna's right. It sounds like she's a lion, as in a champion, king of the jungle, etc. And then if you
lion with an apostrophe.
If you have to spell the nickname, it's not gonna work.
Are you losing your touch, Trump? Are you losing your nickname?
And why lying? I mean, she's not particularly known for lying. Like it's more than any other politician. No, total fail. I bet he changes it.
He will. I think he's A/B testing.
Yeah, that's right. Except, you know what? I was wrong that, note that for the record, Mr. Prediction. I thought he would change from DeSanctimonious because that was like the worst nickname ever.
That was really bad.
But he stuck with it the whole way. I thought he was gonna go Ronnie Meatballs, but.
Ronnie Meatballs was fantastic.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, anyway. All right, well, let's move on to some other news of the day. There was a big hearing before House members, and it had to do with the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Let's get into it.
To the best of your understanding, how close did the assassin's bullet come to killing President Trump?
My understanding is that either it or some shrapnel is what grazed his ear. So I don't know that I have the actual
very
distance.
Close, though.
What's that?
Very, very close, you would agree.
Yes.
FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before the House Judiciary Committee and shared some new details that they have discovered through the FBI's investigation of the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Now, he also questioned, as you heard, whether Trump was actually hit with a bullet in the ear or if there was something else at play, and we're gonna revisit that portion of the hearing in just a moment. Before we do, though, I think it's important to note that investigators still do not have a clear motive for the shooting. Investigators did find that crooks seemed to become very focused on Trump and the rally on July 6th. An examination of his laptop revealed that he searched how far away was Oswald from Kennedy on that day when he also registered to attend the rally? So here's Christopher Wray talking about those findings through their investigation during this hearing. Let's watch.
Analysis of a laptop that the investigation ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. That is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
We also know from previous reporting, he was searching for Joe Biden's name as well. So it really is unclear whether this is really politically motivated. He had also searched for, I guess, treatments for depressive disorder. So that gives you a hint that he was potentially suffering from some mental health issues. And so this is all to say that we still do not have a clear motive for why Thomas Crooks decided to open fire and attempt to assassinate Donald Trump.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say it doesn't matter on two fronts, and I don't often say that. So number one, was it a bullet or shrapnel that hit Trump? Totally doesn't matter. What difference does it make? He got hit because of an assassination attempt, and it grazed him, thank God, right? And so either way, a bullet or shrapnel grazed you while somebody was trying to shoot your head off. Totally irrelevant which one it was. The only way that it would matter is if he pulled a Dusty Rhodes, right? Rolls under the wrestling mat, cuts himself with a razor wire, etc. That didn't happen. Of course that didn't happen. So it doesn't matter at all which it was, shrapnel or a bullet. So, and if you're like obsessed about that stuff, like Joy Reid, let it go, let it go. Okay, now on the mental health issue, of course he had a mental health issue. He tried to shoot the president. That's not complicated. Are there a lot of sane people who go to climb on a rooftop, know that they're going to be taken out by Secret Service immediately after the shooting? He's wide open on a rooftop, right? He knows he's going to die. I mean, and if you didn't know you're going to die, then you have another different kind of mental issue, etc. And you're trying to kill somebody. Of course he has a mental health issue. Does it really matter if he was? It looks like he was a right winger. He, loved guns, etc. So I could say, no, it does matter. This is the right wing, etc. Or if he hated Trump and was on the left, he's mentally unbalanced. It does so let's take it that he was a right winger, right? So does that mean the right wing is wrong? No, the right wing is wrong for other reasons, not because this is a random psycho who wanted to shoot the president. So I don't think his politics matter. I don't think even the motive doesn't matter. I mean, other than these lunatics who are saying maybe he was funded by Iran. Like now everything is funded by Iran because they're trying to start a war with Iran. So those guys are obvious, terrible liars. And almost all work for Israel. Let's be honest.
Let me get this out of the way. Let me make my own prediction before I forget. The United States will go to war with Iran because Benjamin Netanyahu wants us to go to war with Iran on his behalf. Everyone make note of my prediction so I can do what Cenk does and demand that we bring this video back up so I can give myself a pat on the back for noting the obvious.
But by the way, it's not that obvious.
It is very obvious.
Okay.
We will go to war with Iran because Israel wants us to. And our politicians are trained SEALs on behalf of Israel, so we will go to war. We will risk the lives of our men and women in the armed services on behalf of Israel. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So look, especially because I'm not at all sold because they've wanted us to go to war with Iran for a long time and we still haven't yet. Don't get me wrong, it's entirely possible. But if she gets it right and we do, she deserves even more credit.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's get back to Christopher Wray's testimony because he also disclosed what their investigation found in terms of devices, including devices that Crooks used to surveil the area prior to the shooting.
We have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area.
2 hours.
About 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself. But I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the rally.
About 200 yards away.
So based on what Ray is saying, the FBI's investigation has found that he did use a drone in order to surveil the area, kind of scope out the area prior to the shooting. So I guess that's more information that's useful. But look, at this point, considering how long ago this assassination attempt was, I'm actually shocked at how little we know at this point. Like, you have multiple federal agencies investigating this. Why don't we know more? This is insane.
Yeah, there's only one thing that I care about in this assassination attempt, after the fact. I'm glad Trump's okay. So the thing I care about is how long did they know he was on the roof, and why didn't they get a cop out there and get Trump off the stage? That's super relevant, right? We need to figure that out so it doesn't happen again. Hey, was it miscommunication with the local police? Was it something else? Let's figure that part out because it's super relevant. And so far, no one has an answer for that, which I'm super frustrated by because, guys, how long does it take to get an answer? Ask the Secret Service that was there on the scene, ask the local cops that were on the scene. Boom, you have your answer. What's taking so long? So that bothers me, and it should, that's a real note of concern for security for all of these officials. The rest of it is, now just getting silly.
Now, the FBI agents also recovered 3 devices that luckily crooks didn't have an opportunity to use. So let's hear what Ray had to say about those devices, what they were, and how they found them.
The FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices. Yep. We've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call, sophisticated operations, or this? I don't know. That's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's. We've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely.
So luckily he did have an opportunity to detonate them remotely, but the FBI did find those devices, meaning that he potentially planned to do a lot more damage, not just to Donald Trump, but potentially to rally goers as well.
So I was gonna say, there is one other relevant thing here, which is gun control, because everybody has a gun. A certain percentage of the country is mentally unwell in a way that is actually physical and violent. And so we're gonna have these problems. But then I was gonna say, next thing you know, the right wing will say, oh, you have a Second Amendment right to make bombs. Because one of the things I'm concerned about, but I'm gonna come back to that in a second, but one of the things I'm concerned about is that the Secret Service might not have acted, or local cops might not have acted, because they might be thinking, well, someone with an AR-15 is a perfectly good Second Amendment loving citizen, so we can't stop them. So if they're outside of the perimeter, you're allowed to bring any kind of weaponry you want, and it will going to be against your rights if we take it away. So I don't know if that's what made them pause. That would be interesting. I'm not saying it did, but I'm curious about it. But I realized as I was thinking about that of course there's no movement to make bombs legal. And you say, like, of course, because they're bombs. No, the guns kill way more people than bombs do. And the reason for that is because there's not huge bomb manufacturers, at least domestically, right? When there is internationally, then all of a sudden we're selling bombs to Israel, Ukraine, and every other country in the world, and we're going to war over and over to drop those bombs because somebody's making money off of them. But internally, domestically, people make money from selling guns, so that's why they never, that's like a war against the American people. And I know, a lot of you think oh, I love that, and it's my rights, and I want to participate in that war or whatever. But it is all about the money. So that's why we're shooting each other at record pace, and why we start wars abroad at record pace.
Yeah, look, sure, you can have a conversation about common sense gun legislation, but someone who wants to do a lot of damage is gonna find a way to do a lot of damage. I mean, you go back to the 1970s when actually there was a lot of political violence, and a lot of that political violence came in the form of leftists doing bombings. That was a big issue back in the day. And so
did that catch on? No, of course not, because it's really hard to make a bomb.
No, I hear what you're saying, but look, to me, the most important part of this story is figuring out what the motive was, what the actual motivation to do this shooting was. Because if it was because he has a severe mental health issue, well, that is a problem in America. And that is a problem in America that politicians love to pay lip service to, but do nothing about. Democrats will propose legislation, they'll vote on legislation, but the Republican Party, which typically likes to talk about mental health issues when mass shootings happen, consistently vote against allocating more funding to appropriately deal with the very real problem that we are having in this country with mental illness. Okay, so that's a problem. Are we actually going to address it? And that's the other issue, Cenk. We have a Congress that has no interest in actually finding solutions for the very real problems we have in this country. Whether it be gun control, whether it be the issue of mental illness, whether it be some of the political violence that we see arise here and there as a result of all the division and polarization in the country. It's incredibly frustrating. I mean, we can't even get anything done about the shortage of housing in this country.
And why is that? Because private equity is buying up all the homes, and they're huge donors to both Republicans and Democrats. So when you think you're having an ideological debate in this country, that's just theater. Like, you're doing it and you mean it. I love Second Amendment. No, I want gun control. But for the politicians, they're not having that debate at all. There's only one thing that controls everything: money. And so we can go keep fighting each other, and we keep having these debates, and we should. But at the end of the day, there's only one thing that moves politicians in America, and that's donor money. And so that's true in guns, that's true in Israel, that's true in banking, that's true in every single part of of what we cover. Last comment goes to one of our members, because they made a point. It's really good, and I hadn't thought of. Hit the join button below to be part of the show. Camp Corona Dad wrote in, "We want answers on what really happened in the assassination attempt on Trump. Aren't we still waiting to find out what really happened in the JFK assassination?"
That's a good point.
I mean,
that is a good point. Yep.
So I mean, and it's not like the government doesn't cover up assassination attempts and what really happened in them.
Such a good point.
So excellent point. I love how smart our members are.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have some updates on the protests that took place in response to Benjamin Netanyahu addressing a joint session of Congress. We also have Kamala Harris's take on all of that when we return. Don't miss it.
All right, let's go to TYT.com. First of all, Camp Corona Dad, $100 Blue Apron gift card. Rewards at TYT.com was an excellent point. Should have done it on the spot, but I thought of it during the break. All right, Underscore writes in, Anna being kind of a buzzkill about Kamala during a week of excitement. Good. Despite it being a genuinely exciting time, we need a critical eye, especially now.
I appreciate you deeply. And for those who are mad at me for raining on your parade, sorry. I don't know what to say. I mean, if you want to remain, if you want to remain in the dark about what's happening and like the corporate donors that are now swarming Harris's campaign, okay, great. But then don't act surprised if she gets elected and she starts doing favors for corporate executives rather than the American people who voted her in office.
Well, you guys know, we give you the whole context, right?
Exactly.
And some people are better than others, but that doesn't mean that they're angels. And you're about to find out she just got $7 million from one donor, and he definitely has an ask of her. So we'll get to that story in a second. Underscore said, bought a get caught trying shirt to use as my workout shirt. Such a great motivational phrase. I'm gonna get caught trying some self-improvement. I love it, okay? Shop TYT.com, get caught trying. It's now my favorite hoodie. And I love the Team Hope one too. All right, so, and I thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for buying it. I think for workouts, it makes perfect sense. Luke Wise Samji said, looking extraordinarily professional, Cenk. Like you're gonna tell it like it is with style. Look, I'm not saying it. The people, but it's buzzing in the streets. Anna won't acknowledge it, okay?
No, I acknowledged it, I disagree.
Okay, all right.
I'm just kidding, Look, the t-shirt is fine. T-shirts are for when you're hanging out with friends. You're walking the street.
I'm hanging out with friends, you, John, the audience, okay?
All right, I'm being a little bit elitist, but come on.
Oh, by the way, killer meme or graphic or whatever you want to call it, where John Fetterman dressed up in a suit and tie for Netanyahu.
Yep.
And they're like, and somebody wrote on Twitter, so you dressed up for your real boss.
Yep.
Oof.
What an embarrassment.
But well deserved, yes. Lost Mama Oasis, I have some exciting news. Today was the first time I bought pot legally in Ohio in 40 years. Yay for democracy. Love my TYT family.
You're gonna be needing a lot of it. Just kidding. But
no, that's awesome. I love that you pointed out legally. And look, we're waiting on that. I mean, look, that's another thing. Now you got new blood coming in. If Kamala Harris can't figure out that she should legalize pot, I don't know if I can help these Democrats. There's no downside. Everybody wants it, including the right wing. Okay, so now let's go to Twitch. Jackal Dragon 1991 said, it didn't even last 3 days about Trump's fake turn to niceness. Carnitas Lechonk writes in, I wasn't a fan of Harris last time, still not a fan, but I was asking for Biden to step aside and the bare minimum from a new candidate. Brother, whoever you are, I'm right there with you. That's exactly the same way that I feel. Like, I don't think Kamala Harris is an angel. We can tell you our upsides, downsides, etc. But we asked for a new candidate, we got a new candidate, and it feels amazing. On Super Chat, Trisha Briggs says, Cenk and Anna both looking so fine today. And Jessica Rubio says, Moms for Harris. All right, I love that Moms for Harris showed up. All right, we're out of time. We'll be back in 1 sec. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, American hero Clay Smith. Speaking of heroes, Jesse gifted 5 memberships. Dami, Mommy Matrix, always fun. Gifted a membership on YouTube. You guys are awesome. And Wild-Eyed Ian is now a member on TYT.com. Watch out, Wild-Eyed Ian is on the team. Right on Sean also became a member, and DH Gallo donated. All did it through TYT.com/team. And if you give over $250, we love you, and you get this T-shirt as just a perk. We appreciate you. All right, Casper.
Let's talk a little bit about the aftermath of the protests from yesterday.
If you could just tell me what you thought of the Israeli Prime Minister's speech to Congress just now.
I didn't go. I decided not to go. And I just cannot understand and cannot believe in such a critical moment that Netanyahu is here and not home.
If you're ever tempted to conflate the ridiculous wreckers from the pro-peace protests surrounding Benjamin Netanyahu's address of a joint session of Congress, just keep in mind that you might be conflating those folks with Aviva Siegel. She was actually held hostage in Gaza. She was held hostage for 51 days, and tragically, her husband Keith is still held captive in Gaza. Yet she, along with other family members of hostages, have been protesting Benjamin Netanyahu and his speech before a joint session of Congress this week. Now, during his speech, Netanyahu slandered protesters, conflated all of them with violent protesters, and said that they are funded by Iran without providing a shred of evidence, and even called them useful idiots. He called American citizens useful idiots on American soil as a foreign leader of a foreign country. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, many of the protesters were Jewish, and many of them have been victimized by Hamas directly. They are not Hamas supporters at all, but they certainly are not supportive of Benjamin Netanyahu because they see exactly what he's doing. They see that this isn't about protecting Israelis, it's not about freeing hostages, it's about making this war last as long as humanly possible so he can remain in power. And according to the Times of Israel reporter Jacob Majid, some of the relatives of these hostages actually walked out of Netanyahu's address to Congress. The PM, or prime minister, goes on to pledge not to rest until the hostages are home, leading the vast majority in the room to stand and applaud, save for roughly a dozen or so hostage families, which, by the way, Netanyahu also attempted to use as pawns during his speech, and they weren't having it. Now, reporters revealed that other family members were removed from the chamber after they unveiled yellow T-shirts with the words, "Seal the deal now." So I want to show you one example. Here's one of the women who ended up getting arrested. She's wearing the T-shirt. I mean, it's obviously a peaceful protest. It's just that they were wearing the shirt, and the shirt offended the sensitivities of the members of Congress who are bought and paid for by the pro-Israel lobby. Let's just keep it real. So six individuals were arrested, Israelis who have been victimized by Hamas, arrested by Capitol Police.
Yeah, and so when we say pro-Israel, by the way, we're talking about the government of Israel now, right? So if you're not for the right-wing government who wants to wage perpetual war, and that's part of the reason they're not getting the hostages back, you get arrested. Even if you're Israeli, even if you're Israeli and American, even if you're have family members who are hostages, it doesn't matter. You don't agree with Netanyahu and AIPAC, you will be removed from the building. So why is it, look, who's making the decisions? So like, what if you're pro-Israel, but you're incredibly left-wing? What if you're moderate in pro-Israel? No, none of you matter. The only thing that matters is the source of the funding of those politicians, and that's AIPAC. And AIPAC in the past at least pretended to be nonpartisan. Now they're fully pro-Netanyahu, massively right-wing, and so if you don't agree with like the most extreme right-wingers in Israel, you'll be eliminated. And even if you're a hostage family member, you're gonna get arrested at the speech where they're pretending to care about you. I mean, the image of Netanyahu lying about the peace deal and the entire US Congress giving him a standing ovation while the hostage families are being arrested off camera at the same speech.
Yep.
That right there is the current state of America.
And I want to honor these brave individuals who were arrested by our Capitol Police. The guests arrested were Michael Levy, Karmit Palti Katzir, Gil Dickman, Liet Rubin Unger, Alon Gott, Zahiro Shahar Moore. Those were the individuals who were arrested according to the Capitol Police. And so again, I just really want to emphasize that there is an effort right now to slander, to smear peaceful individuals like the ones that we're talking about right now by conflating them with individuals who engage in vandalism, rioting, and honestly behavior that I do not in any way support. I think that those people are wreckers, the individuals who vandalize the Liberty Bell. Look, I don't know who they are, and there's all these like theories flying around. Oh, they're provocateurs. Oh, it's Mossad. It's a psyop. I don't know. I have no evidence of that. What I do know is that these people are wreckers, and they're more self-interested in regard to their emotional release because they're destroying an important message that peace-loving individuals are trying to put out there as a part of their protest, and it disgusts me. And what also disgusts me is that these wreckers create a situation in which someone like Benjamin Netanyahu can come on American soil and slander American people, American citizens, and some in this country who are Americans themselves think he's justified in doing that.
Yeah.
That disgusts me beyond words, Cenk.
Yeah, well, most of the people who think that are bought and paid for by AIPAC.
Okay, go live in Israel then.
Yeah.
Go live in Israel. If you don't appreciate this country, if Israel's more important to you than America is, go live in Israel. What's the problem?
And as I said yesterday, remember, this is why we love America. Sarah Jacobs, Bernie Sanders, Jerry Nadler, and many others, Jewish American representatives, along with Muslim American representatives, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all boycotted this speech and said,
Rashida Tlaib was there. She did not boycott it. She held up a sign that said war criminal.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a different form of protest, right? And so, but they were united, whether they're Jewish Americans or Muslim Americans, because they're Americans. And they're like, this Netanyahu is not helping Israel, he's not helping America, he's not helping anyone but AIPAC, and AIPAC's funding all these. Look, they didn't get into AIPAC too much other than Rashida has talked about it in the past, right? But bottom line is they all did the right thing because they care about America. So now, look, two huge things out of this. First, number one, I want to talk about what Anna just talked about. So spray painting Hamas on a statue in the Capitol or burning the American flag. Look, I don't have any evidence in any direction, so I don't want you to take this as, oh, we know something that we're not telling you, okay? So that's why I'm gonna frame it this way. If that was not a Mossad PSYOP operation, they had to be sitting at headquarters going, how did we get this lucky?
Seriously.
Like, oh my God,
seriously.
This is perfect. So if you're a knucklehead out there and you did this and you thought you were helping Palestinians, you could not have helped Netanyahu and Mossad and the IDF more than this. Because American people are already on your side. The majority, overwhelming majority want a ceasefire and they want the hostages back. And now a majority of Americans saying, wait, why are we funding Israel? And that is an enormous turn of events. So Palestinians, I know it doesn't look like it, and I know you're not seeing it at all, but at least we've turned American people. Turning American politicians is much harder, okay? But so now, right as we're doing that, you're gonna burn all the goodwill and you're gonna squander it by burning the American flag and spray painting Hamas.
Yeah, because they're wreckers. They're wreckers, that's all they are. All they like to do is exploit any movement to release their emotional issues onto everyone else. That's all it is, that's all it is. They riot, they loot, that's what they do, okay? They vandalize property and then they feel real good about themselves. They think they're revolutionaries when in reality they destroy every movement, every righteous movement in this country. They're the worst people in the country, okay? I don't care, I'm not holding back. They are the worst. They drown out the righteous message of the peaceful protesters. They did it yesterday, they'll do it again. That's who they are, they're wreckers.
So whoever they are, whichever side they were on, I mean, if they were on the side of Netanyahu and IDF, well played, okay? If they were they thought they were on the Palestinian side, you've done more damage than you could possibly know. Please stop being like counterproductive. What you're doing is you're hurting Palestinians and the ability to end this war. Okay, by the way, the reason why they couldn't have helped Netanyahu more is because mainstream media is waiting to blame Palestinians.
100%, and Iran.
And so what they did, mainstream media barely talked about the hostage family members getting arrested yesterday. They did almost no fact check of Netanyahu and his outrageous lies, which I'm gonna get to in a second. And instead, on a loop, 24/7, Hamas burning the flag, Hamas burning the flag. Anna was on with Alan Dershowitz on News Nation. 2/3 of the screen was taken up by a constant B-roll of burning the flag, Hamas, burning the flag, Hamas. So don't help the propaganda that mainstream media already wants to do by doing stupid counterproductive stuff.
They don't care, they don't care. They don't care what you have to say, they don't care about strategy, they don't care about the cause. All they care about is themselves. Okay, I'll give you an example. When some of the student protests were happening, I'm forgetting the name. He's the professor who's Jewish and he's been very vociferous against the occupation of Palestinians. He went to go speak to the student protesters. I'm sorry, his name is slipping my mind at the moment. But he was telling them, look, you gotta be strategic with your messaging. And a lot of people hear from the river to the sea and they take something very nefarious out of that statement. So try to not say that statement, don't chant that, because you don't want that to take away from the important message that you're trying to put out there through this protest. Now, clearly, not every protester engaged in this, but immediately after he said that, they start chanting from the river to the sea because they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about the strategy. They don't care about ensuring that their protest doesn't get slandered all over the press because of a few bad apples. It's just, it's so frustrating. It's so incredibly frustrating. But anyway, done with them. Let's actually move on to individuals who deserve a platform, who should be heard from, including Jonathan Dekel-Chen. He's the father of a hostage who went on MSNBC to share his views of Netanyahu. Let's watch.
First and foremost, why is it that he is delaying signing this agreement when the entire Israeli defense establishment, intelligence community, and his own defense minister have already said publicly that all of the conditions are ripe to sign right now, and any additional delay simply risks the lives of the hostages and does not enhance Israel's security situation? That's question number one that was not answered on Monday evening. The second question is, as a member of Kibbutz Nir Oz that was destroyed, why is it that nearly 10 months after our kibbutz was destroyed, 50 of our members were murdered, 35 of the 120 hostages are from Nir Oz? Why is it that he has not come to visit the kibbutz or the surviving remnant community of the kibbutz? Just something that I think in any normal country would be unthinkable. And thirdly, he was quoted recently as saying that hostages aren't dying in captivity. He did not answer that question directly during our time together, and I would like to know what sense that makes, given that from our kibbutz alone, seven hostages have died since October 8th.
So I just want to understand, from the individuals who are labeling all of the protesters Hamas sympathizers, do you want to look that man in the eye and call him a Hamas sympathizer because he's protesting Netanyahu? I'm curious. Dershowitz, you disgusting pervert. Are you gonna answer that question?
Yeah, so I want to get to that. So I also want you to take note of these heroes who are Israelis and trying to get, very understandable, you get the hostages back, it's their family members, etc., but also trying to do the right thing to the best of their abilities. And so one of the people arrested yesterday at the Capitol was the hero Shahar Moore, and we interviewed him recently, so please check out that interview. He made, of course, an emotional, compelling case right here on the Young Turks about it, and walked a walk in protest of Netanyahu's speech yesterday, and we appreciate him. So now I want to get to the point that this gentleman was making. So Netanyahu lied, and so did Dershowitz in the appearance that Anna and he did. And if you see someone saying this, understand that they're doing propaganda and are lying to you on purpose. They keep saying that, oh, Israel's already accepted the peace deal and the ceasefire deal, it's Hamas won't accept it. That is just not remotely true. In fact, as that gentleman just described, and you saw his vantage point, but it's just a matter of fact. Israeli defense officials and intelligence officials are saying to Netanyahu, for God's sake, take the deal. This is our deal. There's nothing left to do. So there is no more military reason. The military has said, the Israeli military has said, we did the best we could. There is no more Hamas to get in a way that's realistic enough, right? That we should continue this war. And they want to sign the ceasefire. So there's not even even if you're hard right wing and you're like, just kill all of Hamas and keep going into, but the Israeli military is saying, we're done. There's nothing left to do. So there's one and only one reason why that ceasefire deal hasn't been signed, is because the minute that it's signed, Netanyahu is going to lose the two right-wing ministers and their party. And then he's going to lose the majority in Knesset, and they're going to have to call an election. And Netanyahu is sitting at a 72% unpopularity in Israel, and he will lose power. So he is delaying this war, killing thousands of more Palestinians, endangering Israeli lives, IDF soldiers, and not getting the hostages back on purpose, when almost entire Israeli infrastructure, let alone the entire world, is saying, sign the goddamn deal. But he won't do it because he's one of the greediest, most evil, most corrupt men I have ever known in my life. So he's dragging both the Palestinians, the Israelis, and by the way, also the Americans, into more and more war strictly for his own political career. He's evil defined.
Yeah, and members of Congress, I mean, they might have broken their kneecaps by the amount of times that they stood up and gave him like an insanely loud round of applause. But that's what we have in our political system. Well, an insane level of corruption. As long as the check's clear, the politicians will clap like trained seals, and that's what we saw in Congress yesterday. We got to take a break. Kamala Harris embarrasses herself with her ridiculous statement in regard to the protests. We'll give you that statement and more when we come back.
All right, let's go to TYT.com for viewer comments, member comments. Helen007 says, the only thing worse than what Netanyahu said is the sycophants who stood up and applauded that monster. Couldn't agree more. What I was gonna add at the end of that story, but we went to break, is I'm not sure I've ever been more embarrassed as an American citizen.
I was more disgusted than embarrassed.
I mean, it's just humiliating to see basically the entire US, well, to be fair, 75% of the US Congress, half the Democrats didn't go. To see the majority of our Congress become weak in front of our own eyes and to become like this sad, pathetic creatures. And it's not that they became it, they always were that. It's just we got to see it. It's like the Biden debate. It's not like he got old that night. It's just you got to see it that night. And so this Netanyahu speech was clarifying for a lot of people as to who's in charge. And it was just pathetic and humiliating for America. And by the way, we're not the only ones who think this. Before it was just the left who thought it. Now a lot of the right wing's going, what the hell's going on here, right? Why do we want to give 26 billion extra? Why are we against giving money to Ukraine, but we have to give unlimited money to Israel? Somebody explain it to me. And no one's ever been able to give a cogent explanation or a logical explanation ever. So, but before what they would do is if you asked the question, they'd go, anti-Semite, and then they try to cancel you in 1,000 ways, and they'd just be done with the conversation and they just keep going. Well now, sorry, cat's out of the bag, you can't contain it. And the whole country's asking why? Why are we giving billions to slaughter people? And then we're gonna be surprised that they hate us? Or we're really gonna pretend to be surprised? And then we're gonna be surprised when we get dragged into more and more wars. And Netanyahu's screaming it from the rooftops, I want you to attack Iran. He said he wanted us to attack Iraq, we did. He says, I want you to attack Iran. And it just is just over the top. And it doesn't help anyone in this country, doesn't help Jewish Americans at all, doesn't help Muslim Americans, doesn't help anyone. It's madness. By the way, big oil and big pharma should learn from this. They should send their CEOs, and these congressmen will do the same thing. Like the CEO of Pfizer can give a speech and go, and now I will raise prices again, and you will have no choice. You will pay whatever I want. And they'll be like, oh yes, sir. Of course, sir, we bow to you, we bow to you. Big oil, we are gonna take all the oil from America. By the way, we're not gonna share any of it with you guys. And we're gonna sell it to China and make record profits. Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Of course, sir. Pathetic, our US Congress is pathetic. And all these years, mainstream media has been calling us radical because they think those politicians are honorable and we've been too disrespectful. Okay. Jar of Jam Bongino says, voting for and donating to Fetterman may be one of the biggest regrets of my life. What a massive disappointment he turned out to be. Hopefully I won't have the continuous reminders once he's voted out. Here. Deanne Loso says, I've been thinking about I should get a Team Hope t-shirt. After a fire destroyed our home and car, and my husband has been in the hospital for 10 days unrelated to the fire, I need all the hope I can get. I know I keep talking about this, and I apologize if it's getting annoying, but we all need help, all the help we can get. I sincerely thank all of you who have donated to our GoFundMe. It has helped tremendously. Look, guys, I love that you look out for each other. You know, donations is a separate thing, I hear you, but overall, heart goes out to you for the house, your husband, etc. And I love when we stick together as a family and a community. Thank you. All right, back on TYT and these American heroes, Tarango, Muzafer, Gurasalan, Obviously, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, but all of you who join through the join button or tyt.com/team, you are the Young Turks. So we appreciate you. Chet Lee, thank you for gifting a membership, and Chaplain Fred gifting 5. You guys are the best. All right, Anna.
Well, let's stay on the topic of the protests that took place yesterday surrounding Benjamin Netanyahu's address of the joint session of Congress. Let's take a look at what Trump had to say about Kamala Harris's treatment of Netanyahu.
Now what she's doing is she's running away from Israel. She refuses to go to Bibi Netanyahu is in Washington. She refuses to be there. Even if you're against Israel or you're against the Jewish people, show up and listen to the concept. But she's totally against the Jewish people.
Show up and listen to a war criminal spread lies about his war criminal actions in Gaza. That's what Donald Trump said as he was attacking Kamala Harris, who is now the presumptive Democratic nominee. She decided to skip Benjamin Netanyahu's speech before a joint session of Congress. And so he decided to attack her on that very issue. But where does Kamala Harris stand on the topic of Israel? Well, let's find out from her husband, Doug Emhoff.
Let me just make this clear. Vice President Harris has been and will be a strong supporter of Israel as a secure, democratic, and Jewish state. And she will always ensure that Israel can defend itself, period. That's who Kamala Harris is.
Kamala Harris also went on to release a statement in regard to the protests that broke out in regard to Netanyahu's speech before Congress. Now, there were some protesters who decided to engage in destructive behavior. They defaced the Liberty Bell. They burned the American flag, even though that is protected under our First Amendment. And they drew a lot of negative attention. And unfortunately, that negative attention took away from the peaceful protesters at Capitol Hill who caused absolutely no trouble at all. And among those protesters were literally freed hostages, okay, freed Israeli hostages and family members of Israeli hostages. They were engaging in protests, but now they're being conflated with violent protesters and they're being smeared by people like Benjamin Netanyahu. And what was Kamala Harris's response to all of it? Here's her statement verbatim. It's the entire statement. She says, yesterday at Union Station in Washington, D.C., we saw despicable acts by unpatriotic protesters and dangerous hate-fueled rhetoric. I condemn any individuals associating with the brutal terrorist organization Hamas, which has vowed to annihilate the state of Israel and kill Jews. Pro-Hamas graffiti and rhetoric is abhorrent, and we must not tolerate it in our nation. She continues, I condemn the burning of the American flag. The flag is a symbol of our highest ideals as a nation and represents the promise of America, a promise I must admit our politicians have failed in living up to. It should never be desecrated in that way. I support the right to peacefully protest, but let's be clear, anti-Semitism, hate, and violence of any kind have no place in our nation. That was the entirety of the statement. No mention of the peaceful protesters, no mention of the Israeli hostages who have been freed, who were also part of the peaceful protests. No mention of the 6 family members of Israeli hostages who protested Benjamin Netanyahu's speech and were arrested by Capitol Police for doing so simply because they were wearing a T-shirt that people didn't like during the speech. But that's Kamala Harris's take on what transpired during the protests.
Yeah, so let me criticize both. First, Trump says even if you're against the Jewish people, all right. This is so dumb. I mean, this is why it's impossible to like Donald Trump. So, okay, so if you criticize the right-wing government of Israel, you're against the Jewish people. Well, I've criticized the right-wing government of Turkey. Does that mean I'm against the Turkish people? I've criticized the right-wing government, and by the way, oftentimes the Democratic government, I wouldn't call them left-wing, of America. Does that make me against the American people? If you're a right-winger out there and you criticize Joe Biden or Barack Obama, you criticize the American government, are you against the American people? It's so dumb. How could you not see that that's dumb? And then he says, oh, Kamala Harris is against the Jewish people. Doug Emhoff, who you just saw, the second dude who she's married to, is Jewish. So that's a curious way to show that you're against the Jewish people by marrying them and spending a lifetime with them. So just, come on the stupidity. So now when you turn to Kamala Harris's statement, I know why she does it. she has to say, because otherwise mainstream media will take her head off and a bunch of donors will get really mad. That's not a statement on her position on Israel and Palestine. I don't know what her position on Israel and Palestine is. That's a statement of donors, don't worry, keep sending checks, okay? Because it's not at all balanced. So two idiots, one with a spray paint can and the other one that burns the flag, represents the entire peace movement, and you don't even bother to say anything about the outrageous lies that Netanyahu told during that speech. You don't bother to say, hey, even Israeli defense and intelligence officials say Netanyahu is the one that's holding up the ceasefire deal that would get the hostages back. No, you make it appear, which mainstream media loves, as if the main thing that happened yesterday wasn't like this sick, corrupt politicians giving standing ovation to a war criminal. The major news event was two yahoos at a protest did something wrong. So look, guys, Kamala Harris's rhetoric might be better than Donald Trump's or Joe Biden's on Israel Palestine. We don't know yet. We do know, by the way, that she had a speech that was written back in March with that showed more sympathy towards Palestinians. Oh, you want to give her credit for that? Hold. The National Security Council said, who do you think you are, the vice president? No, we're going to edit your speech, and Miss Mouthpiece in this case, you're going to say this instead. And she did. So you want to give her credit for, hey, she cared about Palestinians? Well, then you got to take it away, because apparently the National Security Council is in charge, and she lets them edit her speeches.
Well, I mean, the National Security Council is currently in the process of manufacturing consent for a full-blown war with Iran, which is why they're spreading lies about Iran allegedly funding pro-Palestinian protesters in America without providing a single shred of evidence. So that's who they are. But back to Kamala Harris real quick. She didn't attend Netanyahu's speech. She's at least savvy enough, smart enough to realize that probably wouldn't be a good look as she's trying to garner support for her campaign. But she did meet with Netanyahu privately, one-on-one meeting. I don't know what happened during that one-on-one meeting. I don't know what kind of deals were made. I don't know what kind of promises were made. What I do know is that when you look at both political parties in this country, both of them are in complete agreement in regard to allowing Israel to do whatever it wants, having American taxpayers fund whatever Israel wants to do, regardless of how devastating, abhorrent, or genocidal it might be. And I don't know how, especially those who purport to be America First Republicans. How are you going to purport to be America First while our politicians, including politicians you support, put Israel before your interests? They see you as a piggy bank, as an ATM machine for the Israeli government.
Yeah.
How are you okay with that? That's not America First.
So guys, we don't even know what Kamala Harris's rhetoric is going to be once the National Security Council allows her to speak, if they ever allow her to speak on this issue in a way that's not sanctioned. But even if her rhetoric is slightly better, I don't want anyone getting false hope. You know, look, we're in the hope business, man. We did Operation Hope, and I told you driving Biden out was not impossible. So we know what's possible and not possible. But when it comes to her policies, it doesn't matter. Fill in the blank on any Democrat or Republican. Their policy, they will never take $1 away from Israel. They will fund Israel. Whatever request they have, they will get it 100%. There's no chance that Kamala Harris will not do that. There's no chance that Donald Trump will not do that. Donald Trump is going over the top. There's reports in Haaretz, etc., about how he might let Israel annex the West Bank, which would start a giant war.
Israel's already annexing the West Bank. It's happening as we speak. It is happening right now. Under Biden, under Harris, it is happening right now, okay? So Miriam Adelson's wasted her money, right? She doesn't even have to wait for Trump. You already have the Democrats doing it. But you wanna know what Trump is itching for? Something that I've talked about before, something that, to be fair, the America First crowd, I think, discouraged him from doing during his term. But here's what his dying wish is. This is what he posted on social media today, on Truth Social specifically. So he posted a video of Benjamin Netanyahu, and along with that video, he says that his dying wish, if Iran succeeds in assassinating Donald Trump, his dying wish would be that the United States obliterates Iran, wipes it off the face of the earth. Okay, Donald Trump has been a puppet for the Israeli government. You saw it play out in his first term, and you're gonna see it play out again if he gets elected again. He will be goaded into war with Iran, I have no doubt. And honestly, I don't have much hope for Democrats either when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, and he killed their top general, which could have started a war. He moved our embassy because Sheldon Adelson ordered him to. He just loaned out US foreign policy. To be fair, he did get $200 million, so that was a hell of a bribe by Sheldon Adelson to change US foreign. He should have been impeached for that. That's worse than what he did in Ukraine. Why wasn't he impeached for that? Because the Democrats also applaud that. Oh, great, you're selling out to a donor that cares about Israel more than America. The Democrats would, half the Democrats at least, would give you a standing ovation for that. And of course, the entire Republican Party. And guys, you think he's anti-war? Look at him, he's talking about wiping out Iran, potentially starting World War III. We talked to Rudy Giuliani at the RNC and he's like, yeah, the way that Trump thinks he would prevent wars is if anyone does anything, he would just bomb them. And I said, including Russia, that would start World War III. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, smart foreign policy. By the way, doesn't matter how much Democratic lawmakers, doesn't matter how much Biden and Harris kiss Benjamin Netanyahu's ass. Netanyahu has already come out endorsing Donald Trump. He hopes Donald Trump wins. And then you have Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is, of course, the Israeli Minister of National Security, far right winger. He says this, quote, I believe that with Trump, Israel will receive the backing to act against Iran. With Trump, it will be clearer that enemies must be defeated. And when he says Israel must act against Iran, he means that the US will commit the men and women of our military to fight that war on behalf of Israel, much like we did with Iraq. That's what's gonna happen.
By the way, all this talk of like, oh, the protesters, they might be with the terrorists, blah, blah, blah. Ben-Gvir was convicted of supporting terrorists.
Because he's a terrorist.
He's an actual terrorist. He's inside the Israeli government and now controls the government because he's the one that's rejecting a ceasefire and Netanyahu is following him. Was there any outrage about that? Hey, mainstream media, do you know that Ben-Gvir is a terrorist? And he's the one preventing the ceasefire deal along with Netanyahu?
They don't care.
And you're worried about some Yahoo who spray painted something with other guys in charge of a government. And they just killed 40,000 people, including 15,000 children murdered by a guy who's a convicted terrorist that's inside a government. But no, we can't get media to focus. No, but beloved Israel can never, ever, ever be criticized. Like now there's a ray of light because some people in media actually do a good job of reporting reality, like Jeremy Diamond at CNN, etc. We're like, oh my God, they said something true on mainstream media. And we're like so relieved they said one thing that's true. So this is, look, last things here. Kina wrote in on Super Chat, as a veteran, the rhetoric from Netanyahu trying to pull us into a war with Iran was infuriating. Yeah, if you're a veteran that they're gonna send in as fodder,
and
cannon fodder.
They will.
And they're gonna send you and your kids into a war to go get killed. So because AIPAC gave money to these scummy politicians in America, yeah, of course you'd be enraged. You should be enraged about all of the corruption. Why do we pay higher prices on drugs? Why are housing prices going skyrocketing? Because of the donors. In every industry, these politicians are bought. My last point is you're not gonna get change on any of that, including Israel, until you elect an actual populist. Not a fake populist like Trump and Vance, but an actual populist, hopefully from the left, that actually cares about the average American. And that person is not going to win in a normal way. They're not gonna be like, well, I was mayor, then I was governor, and I took all these contributions, then I was senator, and then I was in Washington for 50 years. But mainstream media tells you I'm an honorable person. No, that guy isn't it. That guy is definitely not it. It has to be someone from the outside that just wins one of these primaries and actually delivers for the American people. Until that time comes, money in politics is king, and we'll all be paying the price for the corruption of these congressional losers and sycophants and servants.
All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be back.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny. Bye. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier. Let me remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Benjamin with you guys. Benjamin, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. And you could do it through the join button below. You could do it through tyt.com/team. If you do it through that link, which will always be in the description box, and you're generous enough to give $250 or more, you'll get this T-shirt as a perk. I love it. It's a tattered TYT flag, flying proud. All right, we got more news for you guys. Anna.
All right, let's start with this.
I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is now leaning into her history as a prosecutor and district attorney to essentially frame herself as a cop who's going to stop convicted felon Donald Trump. But her history shows that she's an easy target for both sides of the political aisle because she's been everything to everyone depending on what is popular at any given moment. She went from being kind of tough on crime to being much softer on crime. And since she doesn't really have like a guiding principle on this issue, again, both sides get to pick and choose which parts of her past to attack her on. So look, Harris has written 2 books about her time as a prosecutor and attorney general. So she published Smart on Crime, a career prosecutor's plan to make us safer. And that was near the end of her tenure as a district attorney in 2009. Harris described herself as a prosecutor who was tough on crime by being smart on crime. Said she promoted programs to fix recidivism and made improving my office's felony conviction rates my #1 priority. But she then changed her ideology. After the fatal police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, that happened in 2014, of course, Harris embraced calls for criminal justice reform. In her 2019 memoir, The Truths We Hold: An American Journey, Harris described herself as a progressive prosecutor, writing, quote, I knew I was there for the victims, both the victims of crimes committed and the victims of a broken criminal justice system. For me, to be a progressive prosecutor is to understand and act on this dichotomy. So, as a result of this, you have Donald Trump, for instance, attacking Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor and essentially saying that she is too soft on crime. In fact, I've seen a lot of conservatives make a similar argument. Trump and his allies are trying to emphasize the progressive part of her identity. And on Tuesday, Trump attacked Harris as a radical left person and blamed current crime in the city in cities on her tenure as a district attorney, saying, quote, really what you should do is take a look at San Francisco now compared to before she became the district attorney, and you'll see what she'll do to our country. And I have to be honest, he's not entirely wrong. So I'm gonna get into what I mean by that with specific examples in just a moment. But Cenk, what are your thoughts?
I think he's pretty wrong. So there's 2 ways that you can look at Kamala Harris's record. I'm gonna get to that in a sec. But on Trump's comment, she left in 2017. So now we're blaming everything from 2013 to now on Kamala Harris?
She championed Prop 47, which
she kind of championed, not really. I mean, maybe you know something I don't know, but I don't believe she was on the record on Prop 47. And so look, I think blaming all of San Francisco today on Kamala Harris is definitely a bridge too far, in my opinion.
That I agree with. That I definitely agree with.
Okay.
But to say that she had nothing to do with loosening some of the laws.
I'm not saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing. We're gonna get to that record. But as Anna's presenting that record to you guys, look, my thought on it is, you could look at it as go, oh, she's a politician trying to have it both ways. And depending on which way the wind is blowing, she's going in that direction.
Yep.
You could also look at it as, well, it's kind of a savvy person, and forget the politics of it, not extreme on either side. So she wants to be tough on crime, but she doesn't want to put away people who are not, serious criminals and who actually can be reformed. And you can think that's a pretty reasonable, moderate position. So, and by the way, both of those things can be true. Okay, so let's hear out the record and then discuss.
Okay, so before I get to California specifically, I think it's important for people to understand what exactly conservatives are using to attack her, what Trump supporters are using to attack her. So she did help raise money for something known as the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which provided bail for those suspected of committing violent crimes. And so here's the tweet that they're pointing to, this dates back to June 1st of 2020. She provided a link for the fund and said, if you're able to chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. So look, she might have been unaware of how that money was going to be used. Sometimes there's a bait and switch with these types of efforts. She probably thought, look, there's all sorts of innocent protesters who are getting swept up and arrested as a result of, the rioters exploiting the protests and causing all this damage. And so there should be a bail fund so they can, at least be able to get bailed out before their trial date. But the right is currently attacking her for this because, let's go to this excerpt from an ABC News article. Sean Michael Tillman, a repeat felon, shot and killed a passenger on a light rail platform in St. Paul, Minnesota in May after reportedly being released from bail on April 29th for indecent exposure, thanks to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. So they're pointing to that as a way of attacking her, and I do think that that kind of attack is probably going to be somewhat effective, especially in areas of the country where we've seen certain people get out with no cash bail again and again and again, only to commit all sorts of violent crimes.
Yeah, so again, she's got both sides. And so I didn't see anything in there, and obviously we might debate this, that where I thought, wow, she's really supporting like radical left or defund the police. So in that case, she's supporting getting protesters out on bail.
That was what her intent was.
Okay, that's not that bad. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it does seem pretty good. Just like voting in favor of Prop 47 in California sounded pretty good. But then it turned out that they reclassified all sorts of violent crimes, including child sex trafficking, domestic violence like strangulation, from felonies to misdemeanors.
So, okay, real quick on Prop 47. So if you don't live in California, there's no reason for you to know it. But we voted on a ballot measure, and to be fair, this was us, the people of California, that voted on it. Although the ballot measures are often very confusing, this is a perfect example of it. And we said that we would move some felonies to misdemeanors. But I went back and looked at the text of Prop 47, and it doesn't say any of the crimes.
No, it doesn't.
So then, like, how could you put up a ballot measure and say we're going to move some felonies to misdemeanors and not tell us which felonies? And so then when they did this thing where, it made it seem like it was like no big deal felonies, like
nonviolent drug possession.
Nonviolent drug possession. Okay, I probably voted for it, to be honest.
I voted for it. I remember voting for it because I thought that it was common sense criminal justice reform. And it was a total bait and switch. And I'm supposed to pretend like it was a great proposition that I should be proud of voting in favor of. But no, it was a bait and switch. I want people who are trafficking children, okay, for disgusting, sexual abuse to be in prison. That's where they belong. They belong in prison if they're trafficking children.
So,
dude is strangling his wife, he should be in prison.
Yeah, it's just outrageous how vague that that ballot measure was. Okay, now Anna, what I saw in Kamala Harris was that she was, as usual with Kamala Harris, didn't make a comment on Prop 47. So anyone who likes Prop 47 or hates Prop 47 can then put in their desires into that empty vessel. I don't mean Kamala Harris overall. I mean that particular position was an empty vessel. Am I seeing it wrong or no?
Well, let me give you more, because there's more. Again, her record is super mixed, and it depends on what's hot at the moment. So when tough on crime was hot, she went with tough on crime. When soft on crime was hot, she went with soft on crime. So here's another example of that. As Attorney General of California, she pushed for prison reform, which is good because the prisons were awful, right? I thought prison reform meant, hey, the conditions are disgusting and inhumane and we must improve the conditions. No, in California, they went in an opposite direction. Why don't we actually save the state some money, shut the prisons down entirely, and just release people? De-incarceration, that was the policy that she actually pushed for. And so what was the result of that? Well, let's get to those details. As of last week, prison officials reported there was 92,480 people locked up in California's prison systems, down from a height of more than 156,000 inmates during the early 2010s before the law was passed. So this was one of the laws that she championed, okay? Now, California's reforms created all sorts of problems, including, well, a giant spike in crime. So the California State Attorney General's office reported that from 2014 to 2023, violent crime had risen by more than 30%, including jumps in rapes, aggravated assaults, and murders. I know some of the leftists out there think that when I talk about a spike in crime, I'm just talking about shoplifting. No, I'm talking about rape, I'm talking about murder, I'm talking about things that terrorize communities, especially marginalized communities that you purport to care about but don't care about at all. So that's the kind of stuff they're gonna attack her on. That's the reality. But what's amazing is you go to the left and they're attacking her for being a cop and for being too tough on crime.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's the nature of a politician who's trying to be, depending on your framing, moderate or wishy-washy, right? So for example, she actually did hold some police departments in California accountable on training, which I love. I think that was the #1 issue. I've talked a lot about that. They're too quick to shoot. They get taught that disrespecting a police officer is like the biggest crime in America, etc. And she held some of those departments accountable. That's great. On the other hand, when a cop committed a crime, she almost never prosecuted them. And so like activists, and I don't mean like far left activists, they're just people who care about police reform.
I'm
good
critical
people.
of that. I'm critical of that.
Yeah.
If a cop actually carries out abuse and is terrorizing the community that he's supposed to be serving, he should be prosecuted. She should be prosecuted. So,
right, and she wouldn't.
Yeah.
So an incredibly mixed bag here.
Yeah, so here's the other thing that in general, the left has been kind of critical of her in the past. But I actually think this is a good thing because it shows that she was an effective prosecutor. So felony conviction rates rose under Harris when she was a district attorney from 52% to 71%, and gun crime convictions rose to 92%, meaning she didn't just prosecute and fail to convict, she would prosecute and she would convict. And that was in the first 5 years that she was in office, according to her book. We are sending 3 times as many offenders to state prison as we were in 2001, 3 years before I took office, Harris wrote. She also increased convictions for drug sellers from 56% in 2003 to 74% in 2008, Harris noted. So I've got no love for the drug traffickers, but for people who are struggling with addiction, people who are caught with possession, I do not want them to be thrown in prison. I do want the system to actually have a program in place to help them, and California actually used to have that. They were called drug courts. And essentially, if someone was addicted to drugs and were committing crimes as a result of that addiction, the courts would give them an option. Either you go to jail or you go to rehabilitation, you get clean. And most people would choose the second option. That's the obvious option. And it would help them, a lot of people, get past their addiction. That was a much better model.
Well, this is the best argument for Kamala Harris on this issue, if you ask me. And I am actually moved by it a little bit, which is she says, and she delivered, and you can see it in the stat, I prosecuted and convicted a record number of serious felons.
Exactly.
But if you were a low-level offender that was just, did some recreational drug use, etc., I put those people into more of a rehab track.
Exactly.
But that's exactly what I would want a prosecutor to do. I don't want you to be too tough on low-level offenders that you could actually rehabilitate and get on a better track. And I don't want you to be too soft on really serious criminals. So you can argue that's what a great majority of citizens want. So you could say, hey, that's a pretty good record.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying she was perfect as a prosecutor. There's certainly areas that I can be critical of, including the unwillingness to prosecute cops who abuse their power. But there's this myth going around about how she was like really throwing the book at people who were caught with possession, but that's actually not true. She championed a program at that time that offered low-level drug dealers, low-level drug dealers, right? So random person on the corner selling whatever. Instead of throwing that person in prison, offered them an opportunity to receive a high school diploma, job training, and access to available work instead of prison sentences. I can get behind that. I like that. That's smart.
Yeah. So look, as I read the whole record, Anna, and reread a lot of it because we'd covered some of it before, I walked away thinking, is she a politician that will take a convenient position to be painted as a moderate? Yes. But was she actually moderate on this issue? And did she execute her office, the responsibilities of her office in a way that a majority of citizens in California and in the country would agree with, and I would agree with. Yeah, I also think that's true. So if every politician moderated, maybe on just to get votes, but did the right thing, I would take that. So when I look at Kamala Harris's record now, in retrospect, at least on this issue, and I've criticized her in the past for this, and I did in 2020, but given what's happened over the last 4 years, I would now say I like Kamala Harris's positions on this and her track record overall. And so, and I can see how you would disagree depending on where you're on the political spectrum. If you're far left and thought she should have let out all 150,000 persons, I don't know. I know I'm straw manning, right?
Not by much.
Okay, then you don't like her, and then you'll think she's a cop, right? If you think, I don't even want low-level offenders, getting away with it. I want the book thrown at every person who's ever looked at a cop. Then you're going to think she's too liberal. But I think a lot of people are going to like this record.
Yeah, I think her record as district attorney was actually, for the most part, there were definitely some flaws, but for the most part, pretty good. And I hope she taps into that rather than pandering to those who think that there shouldn't be any law and order.
Right, but if she did it just for political reasons, I don't really care, because all I care about is it the right policy or is it not?
Agreed, yeah. All right, we gotta take a break, we're massively late. But when we come back, we've got more news, including, well, the billionaire co-founder of LinkedIn. He's donated a ton of money to Kamala Harris, and he has a very specific ask. We'll tell you what that is when we come back.
All right, let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Sean Marlin writes in, the silver lining of getting kicked out of the Navy for accidentally ingesting hemp extract is I won't have to die for AIPAC. That's true, but so sad for what American politics has devolved to. And by the way, again, I don't want people thinking it's just AIPAC, like they're the only lobbyists or donors in the world. Do you know how often you die? Meaning the average American dies so that the drug companies can make more money and funnel some of those in the form of bribes to politicians. Tons of people can't afford drugs because we're not allowed to negotiate drug prices. I mean, I can go on and on of the healthcare industry. You don't have health insurance? We're just gonna let you die because you didn't contribute to corporate profits. So this is a sick system. Soap 1000 says, Dark Anna is my favorite. So incredibly base, they write in all caps.
Thanks. I wonder what sparked that comment.
A lot. But I like that new phrase, Dark Anna. Anyways, all right, I keep going. I wore Janko Jean said, Speaker Johnson needs to own this. This embarrassing display of a tantrum in disgrace belongs to him. He called for this in a presser, screw him. It's referring to the Netanyahu speech. Sean Marlin also wrote, imagine Biden enforced ICC warrant and arrested Bibi. Okay, no, of course, that's totally outside the bounds of imagination, but imagine that we had a president that was strong enough, that was like, nope, yeah, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for you. You're under arrest, and you're going to The Hague. That would only be the most popular president in American history, on strength alone, right? And representing America, oh my God. But no current politician in America would ever do that. YTP Renewed said, what's stopping China from siding with Iran though, if we go to war with Iran? Nothing, because then you'd have World War III and everybody would pick sides and it would be the biggest disaster you've ever seen in your life. Joe Gurkin wrote in, just want to thank you guys. I've never agreed with anyone so much. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Joe, really appreciate it. The YouTube members section, Matt Hank says, Cenk looks dope, want the shirt like bad. Okay, Matt, you're awesome. Look, everybody's got a different budget. I don't know if you have $250, this shirt's not worth $250. It's if you donate that to our drive this year, which we desperately need to stay in business, that's why the tattered flag, then we'll give this to you as a perk. So tyt.com/team, if you want to do that, Matt. But either way, I appreciate the compliment on the shirt. Octo Squiddies writes in on Twitch, I have it under good authority that Kamala looked Bibi in the eye and said sternly, cut it out. Octo Squiddies, you know what? That was really funny. You get a $100 Blue Apron gift card.
You stop that right now.
Rewards, is it rewards at tyt.com? I think it's rewards, yeah. So check that out if you're a member. Late Bloomer, but you gotta be a member to win the Blue Apron gift card. Late Bloomer 66 says, wait, did Cenk just say that members of Congress were becoming REEK? LOL, maybe you said weak, but REEK is right on. No, I said REEK, and I meant REEK. So you got it right. Mr. YF says, oh, I know Kamala will disappoint me as months go on, but new blood is all I was expecting, so I'm back in the saddle. I feel the same way. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
More news. Let's start with this.
I think actually Vice President Harris is much more of the pro-business candidate than Trump and Vance.
Even Reid Hoffman conceded that he's not thrilled with all parts of the Biden administration. In particular, he strongly criticized Lina Khan, the FTC chair. He said that Lina Khan is, quote, waging war on American business.
And that is a problem for Lina Khan, who is, of course, the head of the Federal Trade Commission, someone who the business community absolutely hates because, she actually wants to enforce antitrust laws. And if Kamala Harris gets elected, well, the billionaire co-founder of LinkedIn that you just heard from wants to ensure that Harris fires her immediately. So the gentleman that you heard from is, again, the co-founder of LinkedIn. His name is Reid Hoffman, and he's already donated $7 million to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Anna, we don't have a democracy. We have an open auction.
100%. It's so brazen, by the way.
Yeah.
It's so brazen. He's like just saying it on national TV. Like, I gave her $7 million, and now I'm expecting her to fire Lina Khan.
Yeah, by the way, so
wow.
If you think that there is legislating going on and debating going on in Congress, that's so wonderfully naive. Get off of mainstream media, it'll rot your brain. No, there's just, I'm talking about kind of a literal auction. So Reid Hoffman goes 7 million right now to make sure that you don't break up the big tech companies that I'm invested in and partly own. Okay, and then Peter Thiel comes in, and he's already out of Facebook, and now he's into, and JD Vance is into things like Rumble and competitors to the big tech companies. And he totally bankrolled JD Vance's Senate run. So they come in and they're like, I got 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million to break up the big companies that are our competitors, so our company's values will skyrocket. Meanwhile, JD Vance is pretending to be a populist, but he's actually gonna get rich if they break up the big companies. So what should they do? I don't know, that's a great question, but no one's actually having that conversation or that debate. All they're doing is taking bribes from different corporations to set US policy.
And look, I gotta say, the way the corporate executives are talking about Kamala Harris and how they're comparing her to, let's say, JD Vance when it comes to corporate America it's making me die even more than I'm already dead inside. So I'm gonna give you an example. Here's Reid Hoffman explaining why he believes Harris will be friendlier to the business community than Trump will.
Trump wants tariffs, which is anti-business. Makes this a very strange election indeed, because I think actually Vice President Harris is much more of the pro-business candidate than Trump and Vance.
But Vice President Harris, she wants to raise the corporate tax rate. The Harris-Biden administration or Biden-Harris administration has in fact imposed tariffs. So aren't there some anti-business concerns there as well?
I think what's most important for business is stability of a country, unity, rule of law. And a percent difference in corporate tax or 2% or 3% difference in corporate tax is far, far less important.
Okay, number one, he doesn't believe for a second that Kamala Harris is going to raise the corporate tax rate.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner.
Okay, so
that's exactly what I was going to say.
The other thing I'll just say is he listed like stability, blah, 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 and then he ended it with rule of law. Oh, Hotshot wants to fire Lina Khan for doing what? Enforcing antitrust law. So do you really care about the rule of law or no?
Yeah, and if you notice on the corporate tax rate, he said raise it by 1, 2, or 3%. Wait, Trump took it from 35 to 21. On the repatriation tax, he took it from 35 to 8.5%. So they just chopped away, and then we got to pay more taxes, right? So now they're talking about, well, maybe Kamala Harris could raise it 2 or 3 points to 23 or 24. Wait, that's still way lower than it was under. So this is all a joke, guys. All of these. Every politician, including Donald Trump for sure, and Kamala Harris, are pro-business because they get bribed by business interests. It's just different business interests that bribe them.
But Hoffman swears, he swears that Trump is actually not pro-business. And in fact, he lists the reasons why in this next clip. Take a look.
Republicans are the party of business, and so they argue it's business thing. Well, here's a business person who's arguing tariffs, and other kinds of things which are like anti-business. So it's kind of strange. Donald Trump himself is perhaps one of the very few human beings on the planet who can lose money running a casino. So it's kind of like also bad on business credentials. And then you go, well, maybe JD Vance. Well, but when JD Vance says, hey, of all the people that Biden's appointed, he's like, most of them are bad, but the one who's really good is Lina Khan. Now, she is the representative of the kind of thing that I would be doing. So it's a little bit of a strange dialogue. People say, well, are you just, so resolutely anti-Trump? It's like, well, actually, in fact, I thought one of the things that he did well in his presidency is like, you want a new regulation, remove an old one. It's a generally good, kind of refactoring and don't allow cruft. I mean, I think that the regulatory stuff is good.
So again, it goes back to Lina Khan. He does not like the Trump ticket, especially because JD Vance has said positive things about Lina Khan as the chair of the FTC.
It might directly affect this company. Of course he doesn't like Lina Khan. There's billions on the line, right? So all the rest of it is just, look, the ironic thing here is until that last thing that he said, I actually kind of agree with Reid Hoffman's policies, right? So I'm against the tariffs. I don't think big tech should be broken up, and a lot of people on the left disagree with me, but that's okay. I believe in the rule of law and stability, and that being very important to business interests and to all Americans. I agree with his critique of Donald Trump. I don't agree with him when he said, if you're gonna have a new regulation, remove an old one. Doesn't it depend on what the regulation is?
No.
Okay.
In fact, maybe if we're gonna pass a new regulation, we get rid of 5 of them. 5 old regulations.
That doesn't make any sense. What if the regulation was, don't poison the local lake that our kids swim in?
I know.
Nope, remove it, I don't care.
But that regulation's gonna cut into profit.
Wow, yeah, so look, my point is, it doesn't matter if I agree or disagree with someone. It matters that these guys get to buy our politicians.
Exactly. Which creates a uniparty, really, when it comes to the most important bread and butter issues in America. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
You're starting to see, I know it's hard to see it because there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of anger in the country, and it appears, especially on culture war issues, there is a lot of division and polarization. However, if you pay close attention, there's a lot of agreement among ordinary working class Americans on issues pertaining to money in politics, wages, healthcare. I mean, the list goes on and on, but the problem is we do have a uniparty that kind of screws over the American worker because they're both corrupted by these corporate interests.
Yeah, the only hope that I have is that, so the great enforcer of that uniparty was mainstream media. And they would tell you, no, there's a giant difference between Democrats and Republicans. I mean, one of them gets bribed by this industry and the other one gets bribed by the other industry. Of course, they would never say that. They would never say that. They would pretend that there's this huge difference and these are honorable people and they're having ideological debates, etc., right? But they're getting worn down, man. Social media, and so when we used to say this stuff 20 years ago on the Young Turks, we were considered the most radical people on earth, right? Now a lot of people are like, you guys are kind of mainstream, right? So, And we've had the same exact positions the entire time. So there's a populist wave that's coming, and it's gonna crash on somebody's head. But the person that's riding that wave is enormously important. They have to be a real populist, not a fake populist. And they have to actually stand up for the average American. If they do, they're gonna get to take over one of these parties and make all the difference in the world, because mainstream media propaganda is starting to wear super thin. Because when you guys have eyes and ears, it didn't work on pretending that Biden was young, right? And now, or that Israel is the most benevolent army in the world. I mean, these are all breaking down. These are things that they said with a straight face.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, the majority of Americans don't agree with it. And so now when you see with your own eyes, Reid Hoffman saying, yeah, here's $7 million, and I want you to fire that government official and replace US policy with my policy. And then you see it happen, you're gonna see it happen. Then it's tough for you to watch CNN, and MSNBC, and Fox News and have them tell you that Republican or Democratic politicians are honorable people and that money doesn't control everything in Washington. It obviously does.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I don't know, man, we've got a bunch of other stories. I don't know what I want to cover next. So I'm gonna be honest with you and tell you, stick around and you're gonna find out.
I don't know, man. Let's go to tyt.com for members there. First of all, shout out to someone. Oh no, that got removed. All right, anyways, whoever donated recently to tyt.com/team love you. Shelby said, Kamala's first mistake was not hiring new campaign managers. All the hype around her campaign is going to die down quick if she continues to issue the same exact talking points, especially on Israel. And so far she has. So, I mean, I wrote on social media during the one break that we had here where I wasn't reading the comments about how Kamala Harris' position is not any different than Biden or Trump's on Israel. And immediately establishment bots are in there going, how dare you, that's outrageous. Okay, name the difference. If it's so obvious, go ahead, name it. They can't name it because there isn't a difference. So policy, not rhetoric, policy. Rubik's Realtor Dragon says, Anna, they're the same America First Republicans that walked us into Iraq. Like Denny Green said, they're who we thought they were. And so to be fair, I hear your comment, but there is a slight difference. So the neocons walked us into Iraq. That's Netanyahu, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, etc. And by the way, from Crystal, who are now on the Democratic side. But not all. The politicians are the same exact guys, same ideology, etc. But I know libertarian voters, Republican voters, I've seen them with my own eyes. I've engaged in debates with them, real discussions, etc. Some significant chunk of right-wing voters are now actually anti-war, and they do not want to go die for AIPAC in Iran, okay? And so we got to get to a yes between populist left and populist right on the things we agree on.
I actually want to give Sagar Enjeti a lot of credit because he interviewed Candace Owens, and what I want to give him credit for is he actually held her feet to the fire and asked her, you're very supportive of Donald Trump, but you're very much against going to war with Iran. And then he talked about all the things that Trump did that got us closer to war with Iran, and asked her are you willing to continue supporting him if he advocates for war with Iran? And I love that he asked her that question. I don't know how honest she was being. She claims that she would no longer support Trump if he does that. But yeah, I do think whether she was telling the truth or not, put that aside. I do think that there is a faction within the Republican electorate that's sick of the war. I think that's real.
Yeah, all right, so let me read these great comments here as quickly as I can. Boomer Dragon Cat says, I double down on the all-female ticket, fastest way to disentangle from foreign wars, I believe. And she says, but I do fully support aid to Ukraine. I'm telling you, the Republicans will not be able to help themselves with all-female ticket. They will attack all women nonstop, and it will definitely cost them the election, in my opinion. Art Guy says, starting to think Kamala's a political chameleon. There's a non-zero chance she'll pull a Fetterman as soon as she gets into office, hoping I'm wrong. No, look, she's definitely a political chameleon, but that doesn't mean she's necessarily gonna pull a Fetterman. Fetterman is super extreme. Bloated Ego says, I want someone in office that could be persuaded, but not one that could be bought. Couldn't agree more. That's exactly the right way to think about it. Don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper says, I'd rather take a former cop than an open fascist. Well, I couldn't agree more with that.
I totally agree with that, yeah.
Shelby says, if only the progressives didn't rush to give away all their leverage in the first few minutes of Biden dropping out, maybe they could have pushed for Lina Khan to remain. Well, I'm gonna do, one of the next things I'm gonna try is persuade the Harris team to adopt paid family leave. Let's use our leverage. Let's please use our leverage. All right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Pishmek Zavatsky, which is a fun name. Thank you for joining, brother. And now you're part of the Young Turks. They hit the join button below. You can do likewise. Help support honest reporting. Anna.
Well, more and more women are speaking out against the Trump ticket because of statements like this.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
More and more high-profile women are speaking out against Donald Trump and his vice presidential pick, JD Vance, following that statement he made on Tucker Carlson's show in 2021. That has kind of come up again now that Kamala Harris is the presumptive Democratic nominee. Now, the latest woman to speak out against JD Vance and his statement there is actress Jennifer Aniston, who honestly doesn't make a lot of public statements, especially about politics. But here's what she posted on Instagram. All I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option because you are trying to take that away from her too. So if you're unfamiliar with Aniston's, struggle with conceiving, I actually didn't know she opened up and was so candid about it. But back in 2022, during an interview with Allure magazine, she said that she was trying to get pregnant. It was a challenging road for me, the baby making road. All the years and years and years of speculation, it was really hard. I was going through IVF, drinking Chinese teas, you name it. I was throwing everything at it. I would have given anything if someone had said to me, freeze your eggs, do yourself a favor. You just don't think it, so here I am today, the ship has sailed. So look, statements like that are incredibly painful for a lot of women who wanted to conceive but just had difficulty doing so. But people like JD Vance don't think about that. They just have this stereotypical image of a woman who doesn't have kids in their minds. And in his mind, and he just kind of goes with that without understanding that his statements are insanely offensive, not just to liberal women, but also conservative women, which I'm about to get to. You have conservative women now speaking out against the Trump ticket over statements like that.
The more JD Vance talks, and I know that's an older clip, but the more I think pick Gretchen Whitmer as the VP, double down on 2 women. These guys are gonna implode. They're gonna say the worst sexist, misogynistic things over and over again. Him, Trump, all of right-wing media, they can't help themselves. So why do they say it if it is nothing but politically damaging? Because they actually believe it. And they think traditional values. What does traditional values mean? It could mean something wonderful, family looking out for one another, looking out for your community. Those are good things we all care about, right? But what they mean is, no, the men are in charge. Know your role. And if you're not producing babies for us, you're kind of useless. That's why they say outrageous things like that. And guess what? I don't think women like to hear that. And it's not complicated, but these knuckleheads, they live in their own MAGA bubble and they don't realize how much women are going to despise you when you say stupid, terrible things like that.
So there are two other examples of Vance saying some pretty questionable things, terrible things about women that he's getting backlash for. They have resurfaced, if you will. So I actually want to go to video G3 here. In this clip, JD Vance is talking about how childless couples should have less political power or less say in our democratic process than those who have kids. Let's watch.
When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Now, people will say, and I'm sure the Atlantic and the Washington Post and all the usual suspects will criticize me about this in the coming days. Well, doesn't this mean that non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't this mean that parents get a bigger say in how our democracy functions? Yes, absolutely.
That's so dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It's super dumb. By the way, we will delve into this in a future story, but JD Vance has described himself as a post-liberal conservative. Now, what does that mean?
Nothing.
No, Jake, you're wrong. It actually means something.
Okay.
Okay, post-liberal conservative, we're not talking about liberal versus conservative. We're talking about liberal democracy.
Oh my God, you're right. So that's my bad.
Normally, you want to keep laughing?
No. Normally when they do gobbledygook like that, it's just word salad, doesn't mean anything. But you're right, this does mean something, and it's really dangerous. And the fact that he even said it as coded as it is worrisome. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anna, go ahead.
What he means by that when he describes himself as a post-liberal conservative is he means he's done with liberal democracy. Okay, and he runs with the Curtis Yarvins and the Peter Thiels, who are like pushing for this dismantling of democracy. So we have a monarch system rather than a democracy where the people get to decide who their representatives are.
Anna, when you first said it, I had the same just now. I had the same reaction when I first read that comment. I'm like, so because JD Vance in a lot of ways was a liberal, and his shtick was he also did identity politics, and back when he was at Yale Law, but his identity politics was, I'm a poor hillbilly, and so that's not bad. I'm also oppressed, and people are like, ooh, good one. Okay, so he gets a box on identity politics. Poor hillbilly, everybody, poor hillbilly, right? So I was like, give me a break with post-liberal conservative. What the hell does that mean? But then when I read into it, Anna's absolutely right. What he means is post-liberal democracy, and I'm like, whoa! People say that out loud?
Yeah, he's in favor of a monarchy. I mean, honestly, this is the thing that drives me crazy. What he's saying about women should be focused on. I'm not trying to take away from that, but he has said far more nefarious things in regard to his views on what our political system should be. And I want people to ask questions about that. I want to learn more about what he genuinely feels in regard to his post-liberal conservative ideology.
Yeah, and so I was shocked when I first heard about this a bunch of years ago. And then they said, oh, the intellectual godfather of this is Curtis Yarvin or something. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had him on the show because I had read articles about his views and stuff, and I thought it made no sense. So I was like, maybe I'm missing something. And I talked to him, and you could check out that interview on The Conversation. That's another channel we have in the TYT network. And I asked him, so if you're in favor of a monarch, isn't that just a dictator? Well, basically, yes.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, and they would have unilateral power. There would be no democracy. There would be no checks and balances. There'd be no Congress to be worried about it. I'm like, okay, then what if the dictator decides to kill you? There's nothing you could do about it. And I mean, go back and watch the interview. My general sense of what his answer was, oh.
Yeah, that interview was embarrassing for Yarvin. Anyway, but I do want to just quickly go back to something else that JD Vance had said. Actually, first, even if a family, a couple have decided that they don't want to have kids or they couldn't conceive and they don't have kids for that reason, the idea that they have no stake in the game and they don't care about the future of the country is insulting to say the least. And also, I don't know, maybe consider the fact that there are children in their family in general. Like, I've got a ton of nieces and nephews. I'd kill for them. I love them so much. Of course I care about the future of the country. I care about the present because I'm living in it. My family's living in it. We're all living in it. And I care about the future of the country because I have children in my family. Like, it's so dumb and short-sighted the way this guy thinks.
I mean, we don't even have to debate it, but I'll chip in my version of that. So I became a dad when I was 40. So pre-40, I couldn't vote and I didn't count and I didn't care about the country or its future. But the day after my son was born, all of a sudden I matter, I can vote, I'm a citizen, and I care about the future. It is so dumb, come on guys.
Yeah. Now, conservative women like Meghan McCain are speaking out. She says, I've been trying to warn every conservative man I know, these JD comments are activating women across all sides, including my most conservative Trump supporting friends. These comments have caused real pain and are just innately unchristian. This is not who we are. Now, she's another high-profile woman and also a conservative who says this, but there are other conservative women speaking out as well. Beverly Hallberg is one of them who says, I'm childless on earth, but I have a baby in heaven due to an ectopic pregnancy. Not all women who don't have children are childless by choice. It adds insult to injury, to put it mildly, when these comments are said. Another conservative woman who's been popping up on my feed quite often these days says, I hope the GOP takes a step back and considers what kind of culture they're cultivating when two women, she's referring to herself and Beverly Hallberg, with deep and longstanding ties to the conservative movement are moved to have conversations like this in a public forum. The cruel comments about childless women, the screaming about how we're the ones too emotional to vote while they hurl abuse at us. This is what you want for the future? These are the malevolent men you center your outreach around while telling us we don't matter? Duly noted.
Yeah, and one of the women, conservative women there was like, look guys, a lot of libs are saying, oh, you just noticed this about the Republican Party? And there's definitely truth to that, right? But her point is, yeah, but under Reagan, we wanted the tax cuts and the deregulation, et cetera, but we didn't want to be insulted and hated.
And treated like subpar humans.
And I would argue they at least had the decency to hide it back then. And now they're just saying it. And so when you just say to a woman's face, you don't matter unless you're producing babies for men, they're not gonna take kindly to that. So that's not just backwards thinking, it's preposterously stupid politically to say that. So it makes me lose respect for their intelligence and their ability to execute any action, right? So you want to put these knuckleheads, these Neanderthals, these guys who can't do basic political strategy, in charge? That sounds like a disastrous idea. And look, JD Vance, he's got get in my van eyes.
Oh my God,
okay.
You're obsessed with that.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with JD Vance's eyes.
Yeah, he's like, they've got any, it's like, look, if he said reasonable things, then I wouldn't notice his serial killer eyes. But when he's like, no, we need to get rid of democracy and only women who produce for men should be allowed, then I'm worried that you're gonna ask somebody to get in your van. Okay. So, all right, we got an amazing bonus episode for the members coming up. Make sure you check that out. Hit the join button.
It's me versus Alan Dershowitz.
Oh yeah, so that debate happened yesterday, but we're gonna break it down. We're gonna Zapruder film it, okay? And we both have some strong thoughts on that. So tyt.com/team or hit the join button below. We'll see you there.